Hello everybody, Adam Cleary from FourFourTwo here. Now you may remember that not so very long ago, Phil Foden said that he thought he should be playing through the middle because that's where he does all his best work. And you may also remember, literally just a day or so ago, that he scored all these goals against Brentford, so... Now obviously, Phil Foden is brilliant and Pep Guardiola rates him really, really highly, and yet, heading into the Champions League final last season, City's biggest ever game in their entire history, according to my friend who likes Manchester City, this was their starting 11. And again, just a few days prior to that, the FA Cup final, another part of that historic treble, they lined up like this. No Foden in sight. Now, to be fair, he did get on the pitch in both games, but that's not the same as starting. Clearly, he's not in Pep's idealised strongest 11. And the reason for that is kind of fair enough, I guess. You remember last season, City were playing with this mad box midfield thing where they had one of the centre-backs push up into the middle. Now, obviously, in this system, Kevin De Bruyne, he has to start because every single thing creatively goes through him. So Foden was either going to play where Gundogan plays or where Grealish plays. Like, on the one hand, he can attack into the box as well as, if not better than Gundogan, but for the phases of the game where he was required to sit in that box midfield, dictate the tempo and slow things down, Foden doesn't want to do that. He wants to get on the ball, turn and drive it forward. And then likewise, sticking him out on the left, he doesn't want to hold his width and stretch the opposition defence. He wants to get on the ball and attack into the box, which is very useful to have in certain games or in certain phases of games, but Pep Guardiola wants control above absolutely everything else, and Grealish and Gundogan had more control. But this season has been very different. Of this little box here that was so important to the way they play, 3/4 of it has not been available to Guardiola regularly this season, so he has completely changed the way they play. Now, before we start, I will just say that trying to precisely nail down how Pep Guardiola sets Manchester City up is a lot like snogging somebody at a family wedding, in that it's a lot harder to do than people realise, and if you have not done your research, can be very, very wrong, I'm told. Now, don't get me wrong, precisely how he has changed, it seems to vary every single week, but one thing that is consistent is that Phil Foden, when he's been able to get into central positions, has absolutely thrived. So to show you what I mean, here is Phil Foden's seasonal heat map across the entire course of last season. You'll see they primarily had him on this left-hand side, occasionally get a little bash out on the right, but by and large, he was doing that Jack Grealish job. Get on, stay wide, hold the width, and if you can maybe sort of meander into this area, do it, but not often. But this season, oh mama. Now you will see it is still largely focused on the right-hand side. He has found himself lining up in a wider position quite a lot, but you'll see he's been able to get into that inside channel way more often. Like, I honestly, truly, genuinely do not think this is a reach, okay? I think Phil Foden is the best player in the Premier League at receiving the ball in tight spaces and either turning that into a chance or turning that into a goal. His instincts in this regard are just second to none. It's such a waste to try and use him as a creative player or talk about dropping him down into the midfield or having him play wide, because when you put him in the penalty box, he does things I don't think any other player can do. Like, the Brentford game is just such a good example, because how many players do you know in this situation would either just try and head this towards goal or volley it first time? Foden somehow decides to bring it down onto his chest, which should allow the Brentford defenders to get back, but then takes the ball almost instantly once it drops. Like, it's just an almost supernatural reading of the time available to him. For the second goal as well, he's wandered in off the right-hand side into this little gap that Brentford have left between their centre-backs, and he just, again, somehow seems to know to check his run at the last second. He knows that chance isn't going to be there forever. He really, really wants to go, but De Bruyne is just fractionally behind him in terms of when he puts the cross in, and he should just run offside. But he doesn't. He instinctively checks and then just puts, like, the most delicate glancing header into the far corner. Like, that is the work of a proper penalty box striker. Third one's the best, though, because again, he's come all the way in from the right-hand side to find this gap in between Brentford's lines. The ball is played ever so slightly to the right of him, which is exactly what he will have wanted, because it makes it far easier for him to turn and go a goal. But again, he instinctively lets that roll through to Erling Haaland. I mean, he might also get a shout from him, but let's just go with the fun one. And again, how many attacking midfielders do you know who would either hit this first time or take a slightly heavy touch or want it too far over onto the left to get it on their strong foot and allow the defender on that side to come and put a block in. But he does all of this absolutely perfectly. One touch, two touch, draws the goalkeeper out and slides it around him. It is, again, the play of a proper penalty box striker. He's just so deadly in these kind of situations, and it absolutely baffles me that Man City aren't building that point of attack around him. Like the goal he scored against Leipzig in the Champions League this season, I saw that and I just thought, you have to commit to this. He's too good to be, like, asked to do other jobs. Like, if you remember, City were 2-0 down in this game at half-time, so Leipzig went to a really compact low block, and they just could not play through them. But then, in the second half, Foden just went and played right up alongside Haaland, and all of a sudden, City could play into these really tight areas where there was no space and loads of defenders, and both the goals that followed are just stunning. For the first one, Leipzig will be fairly comfortable with this situation. They've got both Foden and Haaland marked. They're receiving a pretty bad ball, and neither of them are facing the goal. But Foden somehow finds himself a yard, brings that terrible pass under control, and puts Haaland in with about 3 touches of the ball. And then for the equaliser, this man is marked. You would regard him as no threat whatsoever. But again, he brings such a difficult pass under control and does so in such a way that this defender now can't make a challenge, but he's got it so tight to his feet that this guy can't get across. And then when he does, he sticks it through his legs and into the back of the net. Like, that's... normal players can't do that. And he's been doing this all season. Like, he was the best player on the park against Brentford. He was the best player on the park against Everton. He single-handedly navigated them through a really tricky game against Sheffield United. He was responsible for the comeback against Luton Town. When he can get on the ball in the middle, he can make things happen. But likewise, there are games where he's incredibly ineffective. Like, he was pretty much a passenger when they played Liverpool, and lo and behold, this was his heat map from that game. He could not get off the touchline. So now, here is the conundrum. Kevin De Bruyne has returned from injury, so Foden's opportunities to play in the middle of the pitch should be a lot more limited now. Now, obviously, that was not the case in the Brentford game because they took a lead, and because of their system, City ended up having Alvarez just play right up alongside Haaland. De Bruyne was sort of floating in a deeper pocket to find a lot of space. Guardiola was able to provide all the width down the left-hand side, which meant Foden pretty much had all this space here to float around and do whatever he wanted. But I would say, and again, very hard to predict Pep Guardiola, it's unlikely you're going to see City setting up like this going forward. And that's the challenge for Pep Guardiola. You've got to find some way to give Foden the license to play in this sort of space because, well, when you do, here's all his passes from the Brentford game. Amazing. Right, look, so just forget the stats and the graphs and the clips and the pitch and just everything else. If I just turn all this off, right, the problem Manchester City have at heart is that they don't need to change anything. They're still probably the best team in the Premier League. They might well go and retain the entire goddamn treble, all without trying to accommodate Phil Foden into what is his best role. But that is not the point. This isn't necessarily about Manchester City. It's about Phil Foden. And I think what I mean by that is that he will be at a part of his life and a part of his career where he absolutely knows the kind of person and the kind of footballer he is. And he could very well stay at Manchester City and win 14 more trophies, but he'll do so being asked to not be the kind of person he is and not be the kind of footballer he is. Phil Foden should be the central attacking focal point of one of the most exciting teams in all of football. But my worry is, at Man City, all he'll ever be is somebody who is asked to accommodate the central attacking focal point. Don't get me wrong, he will know how good he is at football, but just my personal opinion, having watched him this season, is I don't think he should settle for being a substitute in the Champions League final or the FA Cup final. I think he should be dragging teams towards things like that, because, well, if he can drag a club side towards a major honour, then he could drag his national side as well. And that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Now, here's where you come in, though, because if you have agreed with that or even just found it interesting, then please do consider subscribing to us here on FourFourTwo. I know everybody on YouTube's like, oh, could you please subscribe? But it does genuinely really help the channel get a bit of traction on the old algo and shows the kind of progress we're making. So we are genuinely indebted to everyone who has already done that, all like 110,000 of you in the last sort of 5 or 6 months, and everyone who's considering doing it right now. Other than that, though, any thoughts, feelings on Phil Foden, or pretty much anything, to be honest, go grab me on Twitter or X or Instagram or whatever at Adam Cleary, Clery. The 442 socials in the corner of the video. Latest issue of the mag. Alex Ferguson's on the cover. Sorry, City fans, but it's really, really good nonetheless, and available still in all good retailers and the crap ones as well. But until next time, thank you very much. It was me, this was City, this was Phil Foden, and over to you, Pep. Sure he's watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.